People have been asking me a ton about how I can play without seeing keybinds on action bars. Even when I swap specs and the characters, it just seems to flow freely. So I will let you in on the secrets. And by the way, this also works for all versions of WoW. Okay, so I think the most important thing with keybinds is that you can move as freely as possible. This allows you to maintain super high uptime on your target while dodging all kinds of mechanics that Blizzard tries to throw at you. You achieve this by having a well thought out system that you can use on all your alts. You've probably heard this before, but it's actually a lot to it, so here's how I do it. First of all, let me just say that I use a true 60% keyboard and a standard 3-button mouse. Fun fact, I also use custom keycaps without any text on them, so if you're using a 12-button MMO mouse or a bigger keyboard, this will be significantly easier. Standard movement on WASD, I've seen people use ESDF to free up more keys on the left side, but that makes it further away from the shift key, which I use as a modifier on all keybinds. Instead of having 17 keybinds, this allows you to have 34, if my math is mathing. You can possibly add Control and Alt as modifiers as well if you're really desperate, but it's not something that I do. 34 might be a bit slim if you're playing healer or a hybrid spec, but macros like these can let you combine helpful and harmful spells. Let me know if you want to see a more comprehensive macro overview. S, 1, 2, 3, 4 are your everyday rotation stuff. Since you can't press W and 2 at the same time, make sure that you have a casting spell on 2 if possible, otherwise it can get kinda awkward. For example, if you're trying to move forward and use something like Mortal Strike on your target that is bound to your 2, you will probably have a very small but awkward stop while pressing your ability. But you will never have to press a casting spell while moving, except in very rare situations, for example with the instant Pyroblast. If this happens, you will just have to jump to carry the momentum and then press the spell, or you would have to hold both mouse buttons to continue moving forward. Note that I said S, 1, 2, 3, 4, S is by default bound to backpedal, which I don't recommend anyone to use unless you're a tank. As a tank, you never want to get hit in the back since you can't parry or dodge melee attacks, and strafing to squeeze into a corner can be a bit awkward. It's up to you what you feel comfortable with. An ideal setup for tanks should probably include S as backpedal, in my humble opinion. I don't have a paragraph key on my keyboard, but if you have one, I guess you can use that as well. Okay, so moving away from the rotational stuff, this might look a bit weird, but it will make sense later, 100%. Q is always my key. It's easy to hit, high priority, and probably one of the most valuable abilities you have. E is always short movement abilities like wild charge, roll, or blink. It's very easy to hit, making it a lot easier to dodge mechanics and get out of danger. R is always a heal. You know, regrowth, vivify. On classes that simply don't have a castable heal, I just put something that works as a heal or something that is high priority, like a smaller cooldown, for example consumption on Blood Decay. R is a really good keybind, so put something important there that you're gonna use a lot. T is a bit more awkward to hit, but it's close enough to press reliably. I place longer movement CDs here, so like Dash, Death's Advance, or Tiger's Lust. F is probably one of my favorite keybinds. I use this for CC, so Hammer of Justice or Incap Roar. CC is super high priority for mitigating damage intake and maintaining control in dungeons, so it's important to have it on something that is comfortable to hit. I have also keybound G, but I think it's way more awkward to press, so I try to avoid using this if the spec allows it. Tab targeting has never been the most efficient way of targeting, so I rebound tab to a defensive. Tab is really easy to hit, which makes it perfect for using a defensive reliably. Since you probably have more defensives, I would just put your biggest one here or the one that you're gonna use the most. C is always used for AoE effects, so Starfall or Death and Decay. X, C, and V are used for spec or class specific abilities. C and V are easier to hit reliably, so I prefer to put more important spells here. Maybe another CC ability to avoid using G. Most of the time it's something that is very unique to the spec. As I mentioned before, I use Shift as a modifier, which I apply to all my keybinds. Shift, S1, 2, 3, 4 are used for essential cooldowns or role-specific cooldowns. So for example, on Balanced Druid, it would be something like Incarnation on Shift 1, Fury of Elune on Shift 2, or Warrior of Elune on Shift 3. If you don't have enough offensive cooldowns for that spec, I would prioritize putting defensives here as well, since I do find that Shift S1, 2, 3, 4 are really comfortable to hit. And in case I'm playing tank or healer, I put, my most valuable defensives here or healing cooldowns here. I try to mirror the original ability layout, so that would mean more speed abilities on Shift T and more CC on Shift F. You get the idea. I always try to use ratios on Shift R unless I just macro them into my DPS cooldowns if I'm playing like on a orc or a troll. But since I mostly play night elves, Shift R is always Shadow Meld. Shift X, C, and V are used for druid forms or general buffs like Mark of the Wild or Path of Frost. Generally something that I'm not using a whole lot. And of course ground mounts on Shift scroll down and flying mounts on Shift scroll up, because that makes sense. And we can't forget to talk about your mouse because it actually holds a lot of good keybinds. So I keep mouse 4 as default, which is toggle auto run. It's really comfortable for everyday gameplay, but I guess you could make better use for it if you really wanted to. Mouse 5 on the other hand, I always use this for a health pot. Scroll wheel down I use for pings. This is when I press the whole scroll wheel down. Don't get it confused with the standard scroll down. If you really want to, you can bind scroll up and down to get 2 more keybinds, but I just keep it as default since I often scroll in and out depending on environment. Let me show you exactly how I set this up in game. Let's go to options, action bars, make sure to have bar 2 and 3 enabled. You can have more bars if you really want to, but I find that 2 and 3 are enough for the keybinds. While you're here, make sure to lock action bars. This just means that you have to hold a assigned key to move spells, which minimizes the risk of accidentally removing spells from your bars. Okay, so moving on to key bindings, I just restored everything to default just to show you how to set it up. I also recommend character-specific keybinds to be unchecked, otherwise you would have to set it up for different characters, which is what we're trying to prevent, right? We want a fluid and seamless gameplay session, right? So moving on to movement keys. Move and steer we won't be using. Oh, by the way, I actually recommend unbinding everything that you don't know what it's doing or that you won't be using, because you don't want to be pressing something accidentally mid-combat, right? And change settings or bring up weird tabs, So move and steer we're actually gonna unbind. Unbind everything here. Turn left and right is not really something that I recommend doing, so we're gonna use strafe left and right instead, like that. This just makes it so your A and D key, you go like this instead of turning like that. Spacebar we keep. X and C, we will use those later. I want to keep them as an option, right? So we're gonna use Control X and Control C. Toggle auto run we will be unbinding, so it's set to default on mouse 4. This is just so you automatically run like this, right? It's probably not the most efficient way to use one of your mouse buttons, but I feel like it's super comfortable for everyday gameplay, right? So we're gonna keep that. Pitch up and down, we're not really gonna use. Escape we're gonna keep. We're gonna unbind all the individual bags and just keep the B key to open all bags. We're actually gonna steal the U key from reputation panel to character panel because no one opens reputational panel. And we're gonna use the C key later for something else. P spellbook we keep, profession book we keep, pet spellbook, unbind that because I just find it easier to use the tabs once you open your spellbook to access your pet spellbook. Achievement frame we keep. Quest log is fine, world map is fine. Something that I didn't mention before is that your space key, you can actually rebind this to something else if you really wanted to. I personally don't do this because I feel like I sometimes accidentally would press it, right? But if you really wanted to, you could have jump on space, for example, and then shift space for something else, of course. If you're in a battleground, this will open the scoreboard. I have accidentally opened it so many times, so I will actually just unbind it. Shift M opens your zone map or something. It changes depending on your zone, right? And I think you can change opacity. Yeah. If you really want to keep this, I don't know. I never use that, but the Shift M if you really wanna use it. I personally gonna unbind it because I won't be using it. Guild is fine, social panel is fine, chat panel we're gonna rebind T later, so we can just go ahead and unbind that. We're gonna keep group finder on I since I'm just so used to that. We're gonna unbind that. H we don't really need. We're actually gonna use this for extra action button later. So we're gonna unbind that for now. Collections on Shift P is good. Shift J for adventure guide, nothing special. Okay, so action bars. Here, you can see that I start on 1, or you can actually see which action bar is what keybind, which is cool, I think. As I said before, I'm gonna start on S, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're gonna go Q, E, R, T, F, G. And here we start with mouse 5. An extra action button is the action bar that you, or action button that pops up when you have, a zone ability to use. So we're gonna put this on H. Special action bar. I will actually just remove everything here because I don't feel like it's reliable enough to hit unless you are very comfortable with your control keys anyway, which I'm definitely not. Same with pet action button 1 to 10. I just feel that it's better to use your pet abilities like a passive or attack or whatever in a set macro and just put it on your keys or combine it with something else that you're already doing. Because if you swap classes, and on some classes you have control as a modifier as well as shift, I just feel like it's a bit too unreliable to press, at least for me. Action bar 2, okay. This will actually, yeah, you can see it here. This will be the upper bar, bar 2. So we're gonna do shift S, 1, 2, 3, 4, Q, E, R, T, F, G, like that, easy. And then we're gonna do action bar 3, tabs, like that. Cool. That is actually all the action bars that we will be using for spells, but I will just unbind everything real quick since I won't be needing it and I don't want to press anything by accident. So we're gonna unbind this. Okay, so show all nameplates. This is an important one. You want to show nameplates all the time, right? It's these little health bars, right? And by default, you toggle everything. I personally don't play with friendly nameplates on, but some do. But if you change this to enemy nameplates on Control V, for example, and then you do like friendly on Alt V, then you can... There's actually no one around, unlucky. But this will just allow you to control it more freely. On miscellaneous, it's not really anything big. I think I will just rebind, control, or toggle sound and music to keep it out of the way. Hide user interface is all by default Alt C, which is cool. Frame rate on Control R, and print on print screen, right? It's really helpful to have somewhat of a system like this. Once you get used to it, everything will just flow. For example, I instantly just press E when I need to move out of danger quickly. It doesn't really matter if I'm rolling or blinking. That said, it's really hard to follow strictly since every class is very different nowadays. Same with different builds within a spec. Sometimes I just have 2 or 3 more spells to press just depending on talents. So what I'm trying to say is I have had to break my own system just to make it work. So find what works best for you and just roll with it. When I did research for this video, I saw some crazy spreadsheets with keybinds for every ability, but I don't think you have to make it that complex. I would call it a win as long as you're using your entire toolkit reliably. I hope that this was helpful. Have a great rest of your day.